Mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent. You may or may not have heard this quote before, and if you were raised in a culture where justice means doing harm to people proportionate to the harm that they cause, then you might actually agree with this quote. But I'm here to tell you from a restorative perspective, it's total BS. Hello and welcome. My name is Edseth-Griffin, and today I'm talking about a reel I saw on my Instagram feed a while back. In the video, this guy is talking about an experience he had at a grocery store in his neighborhood. He describes his neighborhood as one of the nicest in Denver, and he says while he was at the store, the cashier was just making some small talk to him about how you wouldn't believe the way people get away with stealing. The cashier talks about how people will, move eggs from different cartons into theirs so they have all the nice eggs, or just like blatantly walk out with stolen stuff. So he asks the cashier, why doesn't anyone do anything? It's a reasonable question. The cashier says they aren't allowed to. And the cashier says even if they were, that the felony limit in Colorado is only $2,000. So if they're stealing less than that, they're not getting charged with the felony. And the cashier says because of all this theft, the store is losing upwards of $30,000 a month. And on account of all those losses, they will probably have to start raising prices. Now, the guy in the video says prices are going up because the guilty aren't being punished. He says you're being punished because the people committing theft aren't being punished. And he draws on this quote from earlier by Adam Smith: mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent. Now, like I said earlier, based on how we're taught in our culture, that makes sense. It feels like we are being punished because people committing theft aren't being punished. That's the experience of the law-abiding store goer. But it should be clear by now, if you've watched any of my videos, that that is not the whole story. That is not really what's going on. Looking at this situation through a restorative lens as opposed to a punitive lens helps us get a sense of what's actually going on here and how can we fix it. In the interest of keeping this video short, which is what I've been trying to do for all of these, but obviously I've been failing, I'm not going to break down all the reasons why I disagree with the reasoning being presented in the video. Instead, I'm just going to look at the situation through a restorative lens and give my take on it, basically. So I guess this is a good example video of how to look at situations like this restoratively. So the first thing I'm going to ask when I'm thinking about this entire situation that is presented in the video is, who needs what? Right? Because restorative justice is all about meeting people's needs, as we've said many times. So I think, first of all, the store owner needs to not be losing $30,000 a month. That's a lot of money. And I especially think this is true if this is a small little local grocery store as opposed to a Walmart. I'm not saying it's okay for people to shoplift from Walmart per se, but I'm saying it's probably worse to be stealing from a little local mom and pop shop, in my opinion. I also think shoppers need prices to be affordable. They need these things. They need eggs. They need food. Eggs are food. You know what I mean. They need to be able to buy things from the store. Where it gets a little tricky is considering, what do the people who are doing the shoplifting need? That's something that I think gets neglected a little bit when we're talking about problems like shoplifting. But for one, the people doing the shoplifting are also just store goers. These are people who probably just want the things in the store. I don't think people are going to steal things they don't want. So it's important to think of them not as just shoplifters or thieves, but as customers or potential customers. So if we're thinking about responses to this situation, the store owner raising prices would help to offset losing so much money. However, it would not be so good for customers, right? That would be a negative impact. And so I don't think it's the most graceful solution we can come up with. So instead, what is something that would be good for the store owner that wouldn't have a negative impact on the customer? Well, It's a bit idealized, maybe, but tracking down someone who has stolen from the store and finding some way to get them to reimburse the store owner, either monetarily or through work or by returning the stolen goods, that is a response that helps the store owner without hurting the customer. It's not necessarily the most realistic given our current justice system, but it's something. It's a possibility. Unfortunately, given what our current justice system is, a restorative response to this situation is difficult to come up with, at least a realistic one. Instead, I think it's more helpful to look at how the systems around this situation have enabled it to come up. For example, it's a well documented fact that wages are not keeping up with inflation. There's a growing gap between how much money people are making and how much things cost. Because people are struggling more and more to afford those basic necessities, a lot more people are probably going to resort to stealing them. And I don't think people want to steal necessarily, at least not on the whole. An individual may want to steal, but I think people in general are happy to reward people for providing things for them. Things that work, that is. For example, I don't remember where I saw this. I think it was like some late night talk person's point, probably like Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert or something. But they were talking about taxes and how in other countries, namely like I think it was like Norway or Sweden or something, they were interviewing people about, you know, how they feel about paying taxes. A lot of the people in that video were saying they were happy to pay taxes, even though their taxes are higher than we have here in the States. And they said they liked paying taxes because they know what they're paying for works. Unlike here, I think a lot of our tax dollars go to things we don't see, we don't want, and don't go to things that we do see and do want, like education. So, yes, I think in general, in a society with money, people want to spend their money on things that they like and that they want. In other words, they don't want to steal. It's a very sort of optimistic, maybe even naive way of looking at the world to say if we raise wages, then no one will steal anything. That's not true. But I don't think there's any response to a situation like this that will completely eliminate theft. That's just not a thing you can do. The point is, in a system that works for people, the people will be happy to go along with the system. In a system that doesn't work for people, wherein they can't afford the necessities of life, they're not going to be too happy about following along with the system. They're going to break the laws. They're going to steal because they need to. In an ideal world, at least for me, I think the system that is in place to respond to situations like this is already restorative. And it wouldn't fall on people like me to try and come up with a response to a situation like this. There would already be a set response. We would know what to do. But that is not the world we live in, and instead, I have to admit, I don't think I came up with the most complete response. I think what I came up with was a little bit of a cop out, to be honest. Trying to change the system in response to an instance of theft, it's a little much. But the fact of the matter is, there's more going on than just criminals not being punished. You know what? There's more going on than just people committing crimes not being punished and therefore prices are higher. And because there's more going on there, I think a response needs to include more than just making sure we punish those people. Because punishing people for a crime like that doesn't really meet anyone's needs. It doesn't prevent other people from stealing. It doesn't get the store owner their money back. It doesn't keep prices affordable. It just gets even. And I don't think that that really does anything. So, this might have been a little bit of a rambly video, but I wanted to get it out there. I wanted to get some of the conversation going, even if I don't think even if I don't think I came up with the perfect response to this situation. I think it's just important to look at these things through a lens different from the one that we were taught to look at it through. So, sorry for how long it took me to get this video out. I can't promise that they will be coming out any quicker. I've just. Things happen, you know? Life happens, life gets in the way, but these videos find a way. There will be more. I make no promise of timeliness. That's all I got. Thank you for watching.